Okay, welcome everyone to our class on how to plummet the depths of Torah. I decided I was going to break up the class into two parts. The first part we call the introduction, and the second part I'm going to call Inside Out. So the second part, called Inside Out, is we're actually going to handle the text. First, we just gave a broad overview of how the information is compressed and how it's expanded in a general way. And now, in this part, we're going to actually handle the sources right from the beginning, from the Torah, and hopefully outward to the Mishnah, Gemara, to the Halacha. Okay, so I call this course Media, Message, and Meaning. Okay, the media is the Torah. Hashem decided that he was going to relate to the people that he created in the universe. He was going to use it by this means of the media of the written word. The message is the message that he wrote there. However, the message has to be understood, and that's why we need the meaning of the message, because as I mentioned, he says in the Torah, Hashem says, put totafos bein einecho. What are totafos? What do they look like? Where is bein einecho? So it's an absolute necessity that the Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us with this written message the tools to plummet the meaning of that message. And those tools are what we call Torah Sheba'al Peh, which includes the Mishnah and the various laws that govern learning, like Kal V'chomer B'ninav, which we'll touch upon, B'ezrat Hashem. So this part I called Inside Out. What did I call Reaching the Source? This picture, by the way, if you see it, is Mayin Shiloach. That's the source of the water of Yerushalayim, the old city. That's where David HaMelech entered into the Jebusite city. So that's the source. So our first picture was one of the universe because we wanted to relate to Kodesh Baruch Hu, but now we have to get down to brass tacks, which is how does this Torah that Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us explain what he wants to do here. So the reason why I call it Inside Out is because some people go outside in, which means they learn the Gemara and then the Mishnah, and then they finally look at the Torah. Okay, because there's over 3,000 pages of Gemara. There's a lot of information there that you should have it at your fingertips, and people are trained to first learn Gemara, which is the Gemara and the Mishnah, and then go work backwards from the outside in. Or there's other people that read the Halacha first, and after they read the Halacha, then they look at the Gemara, and then they start looking at the sources. That's called outside in. A lot of kollels do it that way. But what we'd like to do is go from the inside out, which is to start in the Chumash itself, look at what it says, and then see where the Torah Sheba'al Peh will fill in the needed information to go from a general statement to a practical reality, because all the Torah is about doing in this world. It's about taking the reality of this world and molding the reality. The other religions in the world can't handle the world, so they decide that they're going to leave the world and they're going to talk to God and that go to mountains and commune with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. But Kodesh Baruch Hu told us what he wants us to do in the world. So that message is what we're all about. If you look at the Mishnah and the Gemara, what it's really doing is spelling out the mitzvahs in all their fine detail. And that's because our goal here is to do what Hashem wants us to do. He wants us to do those mitzvahs. So that will be our goal, which is inside out, starting from the Chumash and seeing how the message of Kodesh Baruch Hu unfolds in front of us. Okay, so we said, oops, here. There we go. Let's go down there. Let's go to the next page. Okay. Now, here I identified 6 levels, what I call 6 levels of Peshat. That's what we're going to deal with. We're going to, of course, in this class start, although I said in the last class I wanted to go over the last level, at least briefly, but I decided that much better, much more meaning if we really start from the beginning, now that you know the general breakdown. But what I did in writing this little overview is I defined 6 levels, what I call 6 levels of Peshat. The first, the beginning of all Torah learning is the Torah itself, the Chumash itself. After you've understood what it says in the Chumash, you're ready for the Mishnah and to see the new areas that are opened up and explained by the Mishnah. After that, the Mishnah generally talks in cases and laws, and the Gemara fills in the source, because we don't know how to link the Mishnah back to the Torah necessarily. So the Gemara will do that for us. It will link the Mishnah back into the Torah and shows us where it comes from, as long as a lot of other important information filling in, as we said, the empty spaces in between the words of the Torah. Then the Mishnah is usually cases and laws. The Talmud, the Mishnah's case and laws. The Gemara usually is the factor in the source in the Mishnah, and compares Mishnah to Mishnah and solves problems from one Mishnah to the next, and also brings us the source. After that, we'll go into the Rishonim. The Rishonim, the people who lived around 1100 to 1200. There's 2 basic Rishonim that we're going to deal with. One are the commentators, and the other one are the poskim. The commentators are the Rishonim that deal with the daf, that deal with the daf Gemara that we have in front of us, and they explain what the Gemara is doing at any one point. Here we listed 3 basic people who we're dealing with: Reb Hananel, Rashi, and Tosfos. Whereas Reb Hananel and Rashi are on the daf, Tosfos is going to take the whole Torah Shabbat as one unit and ask kashas or ask difficulties from one place to the next. Rashi and Rabbi Hananel are located explaining what's local. Usually, again, these are broad strokes, but Tosfos is looking at this Gemara that we're doing in juxtaposition to all the other statements in the Gemara. That's what he does for us. Now, the other set of Rishonim that we're going to deal with are more concentrated on the halacha. So the Rif also follows the Seder of the Gemara, but he makes an abridged version of the Gemara, which basically cuts out the give and take and concentrates on the halacha, the conclusions of the Gemara. As we said, with the Rambam, he goes a radical step, and he abandons the whole Gemara completely, and he rewrites what he calls the Mishnah Torah. He rewrites the whole Torah Shabbat Peh in his codified system called the Mishnah Torah. Okay, so that was a very, very big move. A lot of people were very virulent against that, because he went from inside out, is the name of our little commentary is called, and he decided he was going to re-explain everything again. So most of the work with the Rambam is trying to get him back to the source. In other words, the people that write on the Rambam tries to show us where his conclusions come from. I mean, we know where the Rif's conclusions come from because he's following the format of the Mishnah and the Gemara, but the Rambam changes the whole format, so we need people to help us relink him to the sources. Okay. We have the Ramah and the he just happens to be very interesting in this piece. There's a lot of other Rishonim. We just aren't going to use him. He's also going to deal with the practical halacha here, although again he's going to be brought by the Ran, which is basically a commentary on the Rif. And then there's the Rush, who is an Ashkenaz who had to flee Europe and go to Spain, who deals with, we'll see how he deals with his predecessors, the Tosfos and the Rif, and the Rambam also, and he will tell us his Pesach Halacha. In other words, when these people disagree, he will explain to us what they say and the basis of their disagreement and tell us what the halacha is. After this stage, comes a sort of a level drop into the Shulchan Aruch. The Tur is the son of the Rosh, and he takes his father's work and he condenses it into 4 volumes. Again, like the Rambam, leaving the page, but unlike the Rambam explains all the Torah Shabbat Peh, even halachas that are not done today, like we don't have the temple, so Rahmanis, we can't do any of those halachas. Rambam explains all of that, but the Torah just concentrated on the practical halachas that we can actually do today. Orach Chaim, all the holidays, marriage and divorce, business laws, okay, etc. So he has the arbitorium. Then we'll discuss the commentaries on his text, one of which is the Beit Yosef. The Beit Yosef of Yosef Cairo, who lives in Eretz Yisrael, writes commentary on the Tur, on the Rambam, and then he writes his Shulchan Aruch that we know of today, of the base Yosef Shulchan Aruch of Yosef Cairo. So we'll be dealing with some of their commentaries. Both, of course, we can't deal with everything, but we'll deal with some principal commentaries on the Torah, principal commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, and then we'll go to the final stage of our discussion, and we'll deal with the Gra, who lived around 250 years ago, the Nachlas David, who was the student of the Gra student, and then finally the Ibn Azar, which lived in the last generation, the last great scholars of the European, before the European Holocaust. So, of course, there's people talking today, and there's a literal Yam HaTorah. Is a wealth of Torah happening, but we're going to concentrate on this scheme of things, and basically because the Nachlas David, who lived around 200 years ago, brings us through this level. Again, this is not my Torah. I'm just trying to take this piece of the Nachlas David and to bring us through each one of the stages. He of course talks on the stage, a very advanced stage of learning, but we're going to do the groundwork, if I say, from the inside out and look at the Torah first and go through all the stages. But the point is, he's going to be the guide for this little demonstration lesson. Now, the point of this exercise is to show how the process is done, how the learning process is done. After that, so then we have all these books on the learning process by the Ramchal and by Yitzhak Konfentone, and they should be mastered, and we have classes on all that stuff, and then you have to sit and learn with your Chavrusa and your Rebbe, and you have to go through Shas. I mean, there's no shortcut to it. But at least what I'm trying to do is show one slice of learning from beginning to end. And then once we have that, we can understand what each level does consciously. And then when we're investigating any piece of Torah, we'll be able to start from the inside and go all the way out, B'ezrat Hashem. Okay, so that's the overview of our discussion. We're going to do it in real time. So what does that mean, real time? First thing we have to do is we have to pick a piece of Torah. Okay, so as we said, we're using the Nachlas David. The piece of Torah we're going to pick is a very, very small, seemingly very small halacha. It's halacha, and then we're going to, of course, look into it deeply in the Pesukim themselves. It's a halacha that says that when a man sends an animal into another, he sends his animal to another man's field, and that animal tramples on and eats the produce of another person's field. So then he's going to have to repay the person who he had damaged with the best of his field. That's what it says. Meitav Sedeo, Meitav Kamo, Yishalem. Okay, so we're going to investigate that little halacha, and we're going to see what difficulties are presented and how those problems are solved in each one of these levels, and then use that, as I said, as a sample case for all of our learning. So we explained that the Torah has 5 books, and we're involved in the second book, Shemot, and it happens to be this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha is called Mishpatim. And in Mishpatim, the Torah presents a series of laws that the Kodesh Baruch Hu wants us to do. And this series of laws start with Eved Ivri here on the top. Oh, I have my little, there we go. This little series of laws, and we are going to look inside one second. I just want to give it, I always like to give an overview so we don't get lost in the forest by looking at little trees and leaves and not seeing the whole thing. There's a series of laws here that start with Eved Ivri, a Jewish slave. It goes to a man killing another man. And then it goes to a man hitting his parents, Rahmanis. Then it goes to a man stealing a person, kidnapping. Then it switches to a man, instead of killing, injuring another man, a level down. And then it goes to killing his Eved, and then 2 men fighting and accidentally hitting a standby who is a pregnant woman, and either killing her and her baby or only her baby. So then it finishes that first section. Okay. I'm sorry, here also it spoke about in the cursing one's parents here. Okay, so that finishes the section of what we call man the damager. Then the next section talks about man's property doing damage. So we have here his ox goring and killing another man. Okay, and then his ox killing another ox, and then his ox trampling on another man's property. After that, it talks about a man digging a pit, and then a man stealing an animal. Before we talk about a man stealing, a man kidnapping, but here's where he kidnaps an animal. And then it goes into lighting fires and having them damage other people's property. So this is the little section of man's property doing damage. Afterwards, it goes into the next level, which is instead of a man directly damaging another person or his animals directly, or his actions as animals or his property damaging another person, it goes to the laws of Shomrim, which means there's people that are paid to watch things, whether it be animals or property, and through their negligence someone steals or loses or the item. So then the Torah talks about the different types of shomrim, we call it, whether they're paid to do their job or they're doing it for nothing, or whether they're renting something or they're asking you to borrow something. And then it goes on to another series of damages, for instance, mafateh, a man damaging another woman through rape, etc. So that's the basic overview. Our halacha is found in this middle section of man's property, and it's found here in Shein and Regel. Okay, so we're going to be concentrating on that level. But again, you see this concept of compression and decompression, how the Torah, as we mentioned, the 10 Commandments, Rashi brings down, is the highest form of compression of the information of the Torah. From there it expands to mitzvahs that are between man and a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and then mitzvahs between man and man. And here, for instance, between man and man, we have these various interactions between men and other men, whether it means hurting or killing them, Rahmanas, hurting them, or their man's property, again, killing or hurting other men, or man through his negligence of not watching properly, injuring or killing another man. So this is a very important message that's what I want to bring over, that the Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah in this concentrated form. It's our job to learn the system of unzipping or decompressing the files, and it's all done in a very, very formal and systematic way, and that's what we're here to do. Okay, so let's get started here. Okay, I have my son singing this. I'm not going to put you through the 6 minutes of singing the Chumash, but this is what the text, okay, this is what the text looks like, even with a modification. The Goyim, when they printed of course, our Torah doesn't have any, as we mentioned, doesn't have any periods or stops or musical or grammatical, not grammatical, but the phonetic sounds are not there. They're just the black and white letters are there. So when the Torah was first published, it was published by the Goyim, the Gutenberg press. Of course, they published the Torah, and they are the ones that added these breakdowns of 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, in other words, the chapter and verse they did. Of course, the cantorial trop was always Torah Shabbat Peh, and that system was put into the written text here as along with the vowelation. So that's added, all added here. But we're going to take this text, which starts Ve'elu Mishpatim Asher Tosim Lifneihem, and we're going to look at it in a little bit there, in a couple of stages. What do I mean, a couple of stages? Let's try to analyze the text. Let's see, and this is always our method, let the text talk to us. Let the Kodesh Baruch Hu talk to us, and let him tell us what he wants to say, and let's see how he tells us what he wants to say, and then take the rules and move forward with them. Okay? So, how's your Hebrew's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So why don't you start reading? I mean, you could read this stuff, right? And just. Yes, Eila Mishpatim. Here, what I did was here. I started already formatting the text, and you'll see what I did as we go along. But okay, I'm trying to do. The only intervention I'm doing is with a tab key and an enter key. Okay, that's all I'm doing. I'm not adding any words into the text. Okay, so here's Eila Mishpatim. Right here we start. Okay, go ahead.
Eila Mishpatim Asher Tosim Lifneihem.
Stop.
Yeah.
So what does that say? Let's translate that.
These are the laws is the best translation. These are the laws which you should put before them.
Great.
In other words, these are the mishpatim, not the chukim, not the decrees, but specifically the rational laws you should put before them.
Okay. Now the word mishpatim has inside it the word shofet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a judgment. What is a judgment? You see, it's interesting.
Okay.
You see, these are called judgment.
I mean, in English, judgment is really at the end of the legal process. So isn't this more the principles of law? It's
exactly.
So that's why I translate more laws. That it's actually the laws themselves.
Right. Now, once we say shofet, it's going to conjure up a Beit Din. It's going to conjure up witnesses. There's a whole scene there, you see. So remember in the parsha before, Moshe Rabbeinu is judging the whole people, and he's telling them what the halach is and explaining what the halach is. And Yethro, his father-in-law, comes along and he says this is like an impossible system, right? So you're going to be knocking yourself out, knocking the people out. There's lines around the block, So he tells them what you have to do is break down the system into units, right, to have higher courts and lower courts. And he wants to break it down in terms of the amount of money. And where the more expensive cases, the bigger cases should go up to you, and the lower cases, $2 or $3. What's the difference? Let the lower people handle.
That's what Yisro had in mind.
Yeah, and
I thought Yisro himself had in mind the complexity of the cases, not the.
Yeah, but when he made the system, that's how he want the system to develop. In other words, the lower courts and the higher courts would distinguish themselves by the value of the money of the case. If you look at the Pesukim, then Moshe Rabbeinu changes it, and he says, no, we're going to do it from the more difficult to the easier cases which can be handled by the lower courts because they don't require a great amount of learning, so they can handle it. But anything that it becomes a difficult principle, so then it has to go up to the higher court. Okay, so he changes the system slightly, but he does break it down into the units. Now, the American system of law, the people who did the American system of law were very religious people. People don't know that when they say separation of church and state, which is a big hullabaloo nowadays, the reason why they did a separation of church and state because they couldn't decide which church to make the state religion.
Right.
They were religious people. They used the Torah. They used the Torah as the basis of creating the American legal system. Okay.
I heard that there was a I have to find the sources for this, but I've heard that historically, it was actually in the early days when the pioneers were coming in, the pietists, they were actually considering making the official language of the
Hebrew.
America Hebrew.
That's correct.
This, huh?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now, the power of the Torah is the power that created what we call Western civilization. Okay. To move from a system of barbarism, which is basically, the rule of the strong, to a system of legal procedure, is Moshe Rabbeinu, really a Kodesh Baruch Hu's gift to man, and through the Chumash. So the people just took that system, and they when I told you the Torah was translated into Greek, it's a fast day for us because again, they all of a sudden had certain keys to understanding, but the details were not there, and because the details aren't there, it turned out to be a terrible corruption. But they did at least become a little bit civilized through reading the Chumash itself. Okay, anyway, whatever it is, that's Mishpatim, and you see right away that there's a whole bunch of detail here that has to be explained. If there's Mishpatim, that means there's a shofet. Who is he? How many people are on a beis din? What's considered evidence? How many people given evidence? What happens if people contradict evidence to evidence? Okay, so this is where I just want to indicate that the Torah itself will force you to come to the Torah Shabbat Peh. Without the Torah Shabbat Peh, there's no way of actualizing the Torah. It just becomes too messy in the details. But whatever it is, this is the Mishpatim that Kodesh Baruch Hu wants us to learn. So now this Eved Va'am is my thing, and Eved Ivri is my thing. But he's now going to talk about two basic dinim, the din of an Eved Ivri and an Ama Ivriya. That's the first thing that the Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to present. Okay? And we're going to ask ourselves a question after we read the text, is why did he start here? Okay, if you're talking about the Mishpatim, start in the second part when you have man injuring another man and man's possessions. Why start with Eved Ivri? But anyway, let's go weiter. So let's read. We'll start from here. Okay, this is where the text begins. You're on.
You want me to read?
Yeah, I want you to read. Yeah.
So, כי תקנא עבד עברי, 6 שנים יעבוד.
Okay.
ובשבט יצא לחופשי חינם.
Okay. Yeah, ubeshiv'at. I should have actually put the, that would have been better in there, but okay. Ubeshvi'it yotzei chofshi chinam. In the 7th year. Okay, so what's the first din?
First, so when you buy or if you buy a Hebrew slave, if you acquire a Hebrew slave,
Right.
he should work for you for 6 years, and on the 7th year he should go out gratis.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Free without any obligation. Well, not what does it mean? Chinam means without. In other words, he doesn't owe you anything, right? Or you don't owe him anything. Well, no, chinam could go either way, right?
Right. In other words, after the maximum sentence, again, Torah Shabbat Peh, who are we talking about? What type of Eved? I wrote Eved Ivri. How do I know it's an Eved Ivri? Okay, it just, oh, it does say Eved Ivri. I'm sorry. It says Eved Ivri right here. So we know we're talking about an Eved Ivri, right? Okay, how did he become an Eved Ivri? Did he sell himself to become an Eved Ivri? You can't just grab a person off the street and say, you're my Eved. We deal with a system of law here, and it says here tikaneh, you bought him as an eved ivri, so he must have either sold himself or someone else sold him. Where did that whole process come from? So again, this is where we need Torah Shabbat Peh. Okay, without Torah Shabbat Peh, you just have to dream about what are all the details. Okay, but Torah Shabbat Peh will explain to us this particular eved ivri was actually sold by the Beis Din. He stole money, and he didn't have money to pay back, so he had to sell himself in order to pay back his debt. So the longest period that a person can stay in servitude to pay off his debt is 6 years. Okay, that's the longest period that he can do. And in the 7th year, then that Shemitah, then he gets liberated, and he doesn't have to pay any remaining obligation that he has to the master. Okay, again, but let's see, go a little further.
אם בגפו יבוא, בגפו יצא.
Okay.
אם בעל אישה הוא, ויצא אשתו עמו. If he comes, it becomes with his own body, in other words, with his own person, he comes alone, but he should leave alone. But if he comes as a married man, his wife should go out with him.
Right.
When he becomes freed, in other words.
Exactly.
That's interesting. So does that mean that his wife is also indentured into slavery during that period?
Excellent question. Excellent question. So again, Torah Shabbat Peh, they learn from here that the wife has to be supported by the master. When he gets this Eved Ivri, if the Eved Ivri is married, not only does he have to support the Eved Ivri, but he has to support the wife.
Is he obliged to work for the master?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think he just has to support her. Again, in Torah Shabbat Peh, it says if you kona an Eved, you kona Eved, kona Rabo. Right. When you acquire an Eved in Jewish law, you acquire a master. Why? If you have one pillar, you have to give it to the Eved. So it has nothing to do, again, with the popular concept of slavery that we hear about in the United States. Although they did read the Chumash, they didn't know what they were talking about, as usual. So their abuse of the word, and that's why we have a fast day, led to whatever they considered to slavery to be. But in Jewish law, this person is working off a debt. That's why they call him an indentured servant, and his honor is so important that it's even, as I said, one pillow, it goes to the Eved, and it says when you acquire an Eved, you acquire a master. You have to be nicer to him than you are to yourself. So we shouldn't get any misinterpretations here. But again, if you don't have Torah Shabbat Peh, you just read the raw text. So here's a few dinim. Okay, so let's go here with the next law.
Im Adonav ייתן לו אישה, so if his master gives him a wife,
right,
וילדה לו בנים או בנות, and she becomes pregnant and gives him sons or daughters, האישה וילדיה תהיה לאדוניה. So the woman and her children will, I guess, they will belong to the master,
Mm-hmm.
But he, nevertheless, will go out free. He
Right.
himself.
Right. So we see two different cases, when he comes in with a wife and when his master gives him a wife, okay? And the difference is that when he has a wife, so then he goes out with his wife, but if he's given a wife from the master, then he loses the wife and the children. Okay. Why did I put these spaces between these two units here?
They're all if-then statements. No? They're the consequences. On the right hand are the conditions. And then on the left hand is the consequences.
Right. Now the consequence. Go ahead.
Not the consequence, but what should be the halacha. In other words, the prescription is on the left hand, and the situation is on the right hand. Let's say that maybe.
Or I would say the case is on the right hand and the law is on the left hand. Okay? So we see already that the Torah is expressing itself in case and law.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? In case and law. That's why I'm just using the the tab here. But that's an important thing to see when we hear the Torah read, or if we even read the Torah, because we don't visualize it. So it's hard to hold these things in our heads. Now, of course, people who are masters of the text deal with it in their head. As I told you, when you ask a kid nowadays to do 3 times 4, he pulls out his calculator, but we had it in our head. So people in the past generations, of course, and people today too, who are serious scholars, have the Torah in their heads. Rabbi Nevinsol in the Old City, I don't know if you know him, but he used to read, he davens Fasik and sunrise every day. So, and he used to be the Balkore. At a certain point, he stopped being the Balkore. So what I heard was the reason was because he wasn't reading anymore. The Torah was so much part of him that he was just saying it balpeh.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So the people who are handling at that level, so they don't have a problem of seeing the words in their proper case and law. But for us who hear things and don't collate, don't grab them properly, so that's why I'm doing this, what I call visual logic, because when you do this visually on a page, so then you begin to see very clearly how the Torah is expressing itself. Okay, so we learned over here, first of all, that the Torah speaks in terms of case and law. Okay, also it turns in terms of klal uprat. First it talks about here ki tiknei eved ivri. It tells us the general law of sheish shanim yavod, right? Now it's going to tell us the details, a difference between if the person has a wife or he doesn't have a wife. Okay, those are the details of the general halacha, okay, of Eved Ivri. Okay, you with me? So we'll also see, as we go on and examine this, how the Torah presents itself. Not only from the general to the particular, but we'll see some other very interesting things and begin to learn how the Torah expresses itself. Okay, so let's go weiter. The fourth halacha here.
ואם אמר יאמר העבד, אהבתי את אדוני, את אשתי ואת בני, לא אצא חופשי. So if the slave says, I love my master, I love my wife and my sons, or my
children,
sons, my children, then I don't want to go out free.
That's the whole statement he makes. He's saying it. He makes that whole statement. So then what does the person who acquired him, the master, do? Here's the law.
Right. Now,
in this case, Elohim means here. Yeah, exactly. It means the judges. Okay.
Right.
Again, how many judges? You have to know, Torah, how many judges? More than one here.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
So they'll bring him to the door, or el mezuzah, or to the doorpost. ורצה אדוניו את אוזנו במרצה, ועבדו לעולם. So then he will bore a hole through his ear with an awl, and he will be his slave forever, for his lifetime.
Right. And really, Leolam, we're going to learn again, Torah Shabbat Peh means till the 50th year, the Yovel.
Oh, to the Yovel, right.
Yeah. Now, we learn that again, Torah Shabbat Peh. You can't, from the text, you would know. Leolam is, you translate it correct, is forever and ever. That's it. Okay. Yeah. But we have to learn another principle, that the Torah, and here's a very important principle, the Torah is a complete unit, and the links from one place to the other will amplify the halacha in another place. Okay, so for instance, this whole idea of Beis Din, we're going to have to link to other places to know how a Beis Din is created. Or La'olam, we're going to have to link to other places to see what Le'olam means, or forever means. Okay, so the Torah explains itself through this linkage. It's a complete unit. So although we're reading this particular unit, this unit has to be seen in relationship to the other parts of the Torah. Okay, and that's again Torah Shabbat Peh will explain to us those links and how the information moves from one place to the next. It's really a three-dimensional unit. It's a web. It really is a network, a three-dimensional network, where cases are explained by other cases, and also where cases interact with other cases. By which I mean that what you read here can be modified by other pasukim in other places. Okay, so you have to always start with what it means is what it says here, and then you have to see this in context of other places, like for instance the word Leolam, which the Torah Shabbat Peh would tell us is only to the Yovel. So how do we know that? Is Torah Shabbat Peh. We have to go to the Gemara and to see how that works. Okay, very good. This little mark here is a stuma. Mentioned that the stuma, as opposed to Pesucha, is a break which doesn't extend to the end of the line. Okay, it's spaces that interrupt the text but don't go to the end of the line. The Petuch goes to the end of the line. And when we finish a unit, like we did here with the Eved Ivri, so we see the stuma, but it's not a whole unit, so we don't see the Pesucha. So let's go to the next unit. What does the next unit talk about? So I wrote this word in Hebrew, Amma. It's going to talk about now. We're going to talk about the Amma Ivriya. Okay, how does a woman become a servant, a slave? Okay, all right. So let's see how that works. Now notice also we went from the man to the woman. Okay, we don't have these problems in the Torah of who's first and who's second. In the world, they have a lot of problems with it, but the Torah tells us the seder of things: the man, then the woman. Okay, could have started with the woman first, but it doesn't. Start with the man first, which means the man is supposed to be first. It's very interesting, you know, in Adam Rishon, when he was created, he was, his face, one side of his face was a man, and the back side of his face was a woman. Did you ever hear that? So the Gemara, the Gemara asks, so how did they walk?
Right.
Right? Which way did they go?
Well, yeah.
So the Gemara says, Mistavra, they went the way that the man went. You see, it means it's reasonable to assume that the man took the lead. Okay, again, nowadays, unfortunately, we're entering an era of, if you read Daniel, you'll see exactly what's happening, but we're entering an area of total mess where people think that they're improving things and destroying reality. But our job is to understand how Torah organizes information and ideas and reality, and then to understand how that makes much more sense than other possibilities. Okay, but now we went from Eved, now we're going to talk about the Amma. Okay? V'ki.
V'ki imkar
Yimkor. Yimkor, yeah.
כי ימכור איש את ביתו לאמה, לא תצא כצאת העבדים. So
Okay.
when a man sells his daughter as a maid servant,
Hmm.
she will not go out in the way that slaves go out.
Okay.
So she's, it's interesting. She's not, can a woman work off, can a woman be indentured as a man? In other words, if she commits a crime, if she's a thief, could she also be sold into slavery? Or why is it only the father here selling the daughter?
Very good question. The answer is I don't know the answer to that question. That's a proper. It's a proper question because all of a sudden we switched the subject from, and this is another very important
Right.
observation. We went here. We said the subject here was we don't even know who the subject was. Right? It says ki tikne evidivri. Well, who acquired the evidivri? A man or a woman?
I guess conceivably evidivri could also be a woman.
Well, here.
I mean, not grammatically.
Well, here,
but
and also because the case obviously is not talking about a woman here.
Right.
The case is talking about a man giving a wife. Okay,
Yeah.
but this is all Gemara. You're asking very well. This is all Gemara's and Kedushin. Talks about all the complexities of this pasuk. Okay, but we're just going to do it in context, and that's why I'm going through the exercise. Okay, good. But here we switch, and very important, from buying to selling, and all of a sudden it didn't talk about a woman selling herself or the basin selling a woman. We don't know what those requirements are. It's not expressed here, but it talks about the father who happens to be selling his daughter to be a indentured servant. Okay, so she doesn't go. What?
This is the Jewish father?
Jewish father, yeah.
Very strange, okay.
Right, it is very strange.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's what it is. Okay, so she doesn't go out like the Avadim go out. Now, which Avadim, how, and that's a comparative statement. You would presume that it's the Avadim mentioned above. But if you look at Rashi, who explains Torah Shabbat Peh, it's not that type of Avadim. But anyway, we're just doing a general overview here because our aim really is to get to the case of Meitav, okay? But we're just showing that by reading the simple text, you have to ask these questions, and these questions are the questions that are answered with Torah Shabbat Peh, okay? So let's look at her laws here. We have 3 different laws for her. She doesn't go out like a Vadim. Let's see how. Again, that's a general rule. Let's see the specifics.
Yeah, so here, okay, אם ראה בעיני אדוניה, אשר לא ידע ומה זה הפדה.
Exactly, what's called hefta. What's called iyun, what's called hefta. You see? What are those principles? Iyun. So he's supposed to marry her, really, you see?
לא ידע.
Yeah, these are all technical words. Without knowing these terms, there's nothing to do. Okay, so he's really supposed to marry her, the person who he's being sold to. It's not really just it's not indentured service just to work off a debt here. He's really supposed to marry her. But if he doesn't, and she's not redeemed either, the father can also redeem her, then what happens? That's the case. Let's get to the law.
What's hefda?
Poda, she's not redeemed by the father. She can be bought back by. In other words, she could pay the money to the owner, and get his daughter back. Pedia, liftot, to liftot. Okay.
Yeah.
So if she's not redeemed and she's not married, so the new master is told. Here's the halacha. That's the case.
So he's told לעם נוכרי לא ימשל למכירה בבגדו בה.
Yeah, he's boged.
So he should not. So he should not be selling. He should not sell it to a non-Jew.
Because that would be
what does that mean?
that would be called boged. It's called a betrayal. He's betraying her by selling her to her.
He's betraying her by not marrying her, basically.
Or by Yeah, exactly. By not marrying her, and then or by selling it to a guy, and we'll have to understand what Peshat is. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know the Peshat, but that's what it says.
Wait, no, but it's saying La'am Nochi Loim, he should not
He
sell it.
can't sell it to a guy
Yeah,
because he has betrayed her. Why has he betrayed her? Because he didn't marry her. He was supposed to marry her.
right,
Okay, Beseda.
right.
Now he has some other.
Wait,
Yeah, go ahead,
it's,
please.
it's saying he can't. It's categorical. He can't sell her to a goy.
That's right. He can't.
So really, okay, bivgadol. I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
strictly speaking, bivgadol just means that in the event that he's betraying her, which means that he is, letting her go.
If he would be selling her, I don't know if
Yeah.
betrayal means that he's not marrying her, or
Right.
betrayal means that it would be a betrayal to sell it to a guy. But I don't know. I don't know which one of the two, what's Peshat here.
Well, grammatically, it just makes sense. The second one makes more sense because he's doing it. Bivgadol bas. He's already doing.
What was his begida? His begida was that he didn't marry her, right?
Right. It's
Yeah.
a strong word for that.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Ve'im livno, ve'im livno yadna. What's yadna again?
It means to marry. So yiyud is a type of marriage what comes with when the father has a right to sell his daughter into this relationship. Then the person who acquires the daughter is supposed to really marry her. It's supposed to be a way of the daughter getting married, right? So either him or you'll see that his son can also marry her, right? We'll see in 1 second. Iyud is marriage for this relationship.
It's what kind of marriage is it's
Marriage. Oh, you'll see in 1 second.
I mean it's not kedushin, it's not.
Yes, it is. It is. It's kedushin completely.
yeah? It's
She
a
becomes his
proper
total. Yeah. She becomes a total wife.
Okay, so if he doesn't marry her off to his son, kimishpat habano.
No. Ve'im livno yadena. If he does marry,
Oh,
if it's
he does marry. Right.
Mhm.
Right. He passes her on to his son,
Mhm.
and her son marries her. He should do to her like the law that pertains to all daughters, I guess.
Exactly.
Any Jewish girl.
Right.
Im acheret yikach lo, and if he takes for himself another wife, I guess.
No, I think.
Assuming this is what.
No. If not him or his son, but someone else marries her now.
Im acheret, what is that, feminine?
Im acheret yikach lo. Oh.
Acheret is the woman.
Oh. Im acheret yikach lo.
Yeah, it's not im acher.
You're right.
Else.
You're right.
What does that mean? I don't know. Anyway.
I have to look into.
Yeah, so
If he takes someone else to himself.
Yeah, that sounds like he's taking on another wife, or at least.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. It looks like it.
Yeah.
You're right.
So, shara, ksuta, ve'amata, lo yigra. These are rights. These are legal
very
rights
good.
that she has.
Yeah, in other words, if he does marry her and then he marries someone else, I think.
Right. And
So then
he doesn't want to pay so much attention to the first one.
Exactly. He cannot diminish her support, her clothing,
Right.
and living with her.
Right.
Okay.
Conjugal rights. Yeah.
Conjugal rights, right.
Right. ואם שלוש אלה לא יעשה לה, and if he fails in these three obligations, ויצא חינם אין כסף. She should go out free without owing him anything.
Right.
In other words, because he bought her, but now she doesn't owe him anything.
Right. So if he defies these three things, then she gets her freedom. Okay. Good. So the question is here, why did the Torah start Mishpatim with this relationship?
Yeah.
That's the question.
I mean, in a way, to me, I mean, just, prima facie, it makes sense because it's the worst case scenario. What's the worst human relationship you can have? Master and slave. Okay, let's start there. The worst case scenario, then, okay, we can work our way up to the best case scenario. But I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I wanted to say something similar, okay, but to give a reason to it. Now, again, I'm just, because I asked the question, I'm giving an answer. We would have to research whether the answer is valid or not. But as I mentioned to you, you see, again, we don't know about the text, but how did this person become, the first case, how did the person become an Eved Ivri? So he stole and then didn't have money, and then that's why he was sold into servitude, right?
Yeah.
And then what made things worse is that he decided that he didn't want his own freedom, right? So what I right, because he said, I want to be with my master and I don't want my freedom. So what I wanted to say is this is the case of a person damaging himself. The next case we're going to talk about a person damaging others, but here is when a person damages himself. Okay, either because he stole and ended up having to be sold, or he wants to be a slave, which is his own decision. He's the one that says, I want to be a slave. No one told him to do such a thing. And matter of fact, the reason why I put the all in the ear is because it's the worst thing for a Jew is to be a slave. We're only supposed to be slaves to Kodesh Baruch Hu. So I wanted to say that we're starting off with a person damaging himself. Okay, that's the Eved Ivri. And then we talked about the Eved Ivri, so we talked about the female part, okay, which is really the father damaging his own daughter. But what I'm presenting here as a possibility is this whole part is about damages. Okay, whether you damage yourself or whether you damage your children here by selling them, or next we're going to damage others. Okay, but that's what I wanted to present. And I've seen this. We'll see it here also, but I've seen it also in the halacha, that which follows. I believe this Chumash attitude is where you start from the inside out. You start from the closest form of damage, which is the person damaging himself or his own children, and then we're going to go now to damaging others. Okay, then from damaging others, we're going to property damaging others, and then we're going to continue to a lack of shmira damaging others. Okay, so that's the proposition that I want to propose. Okay, but the reason why I came to it is because we analyzed and we said, what's the order? What's the order of presentation? Once we ask the order of presentation, so these questions come up and they have to be answered. Okay, so let's go to the next case. Okay, now we're going to talk about, go ahead.
Damages, Mishpatim is basically the first section in the Torah where the Torah addresses, Mishpatim in the generic sense of the term. I mean, if we divide the Chukim and Mishpatim, right? So suddenly you have the first thematic presentation of civil law. So it's interesting that really the beginning of civil law is damages, that tort law, right? Tort
That's
law.
Correct. That's correct. And we're going to see at the end of this pasuk, if we as we heard very quickly, the Kriyas Torah today talks about the relationship that we have to Kodesh Baruch Hu. So the two luchot, the 10 Commandments, 5 and 5. So the first 5 is between man and a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and the second 5 is between man and man. In the presentation of the Mishpatim, is very interesting that at first Hashem talks about a relationship between man and man, and then at the end of this pasuk, we're going to start talking about the relationship of man and Kodesh Baruch Hu. Okay, but it's all, again, we're trying to understand the manner of presentation. When you write a speech, lahavdil, right? But when you write a speech, you have to give a lesson. You think about what you're going to say first and what you're going to say second, and you try to make a logical progression from one piece to the next. Alachas kama v'kama, Kodesh Baruch Hu, when he's presenting the Chumash to Klal Yisrael, there's a very rational presentation, and part of our job is to understand that presentation. And this type of question is going to not only be addressed to the Chumash whenever we see, and there's another thing I'm going to mention, but also whenever we see something out of order, it's a flag to say, why is it out of order? That's one of our rules, and that's going to resonate in the Mishnah, in the Gemara, and in all the great writings. Okay, it's a basic fundament that there should be a logical order to things. Things are not created or not presented in a haphazard way. Okay, so it's our job to see and to focus on what is the logical form of presentation. Whenever we see something violating a basic principle of Seder, we have to say either there's a new form of Seder here or there's another message being sent here. Okay, and that's the way the learning process is done. Okay, Beseder? Beseder. Beseder. What does Beseder do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Literally.
Right. So, Shas is called Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. The 6 orders of Mishnah, So there's a phrase which I asked Rav Kona. It's not Chazal, but people say that Seder is Chetzi Avodah. That Seders have to work. So I usually say, but the problem is they start with the second half. They don't start with the Seder, and that's why they never get anywhere. It's not only Seder, it's not only Seder Chetzi Avodah, it's the first part of your Avodah, not the second. If you try to do it second, then you end up. But anyway, so here it's a very important thing to see, and by doing this thing called, what I do here, it makes you able to focus on these type of things, which is what is the Seder of presentation? What is the connection of the ideas? Do they follow a logical flow? You see? Okay, so let's go now to the second unit here, because we have after this unit too, the first little unit ended with the Eved Ivri, with a stuma, and the second unit ended with the Amma Ivriya with a stuma, and now we're going to go to the third section. So let's read it. This is my little kishkushim up here, my little comments, but let's just read the text itself first.
Maka ish or makeh or maka?
I think it's makeh.
Maka ish v'met mot yumat. If somebody hits another man, he should die also. Or if somebody hits a man and that man dies, that person who hit should die. He will die.
Right. Now we don't know. Now again, case in law. We know that someone, subject not mentioned here, right? You immediately say anyone, but we don't know who is doing the makeh here, right? Correct? We don't know who is the assailant, but we know who is the victim. Well, who's the assailant here?
What do you mean who?
Who's hitting?
Is it a man or a woman or what?
Exactly. Is it a man, a woman, a child?
Right? I see.
Is it a Cohen, a Levi? Is it an Eved Ivri? Okay. So we don't know the assailant. We know the victim. Correct?
Right.
Now,
does that imply that the assailant is the most generic type of assailant, or?
So all the way down, I'm just, giving you a sneak preview of what happens in the future here. It's all one Torah, you see. Here's a pasuk in Ve'ikra, you see? And as I told you, the Torah is all one unit. Here it says, Ve'ish ki yakeh kol nefesh adam mos yumas. All of a sudden, it tells us who the perpetrator is.
It's an ish. Has to be an ish.
Yes. And the victim is not only an ish, but kol nefesh. So you'll read Rashi there afterwards, and you'll see that the Mechilta goes to great lengths to explain the variation of these two pasukim. Why one has a subject and one doesn't, why this is a klal, kol nefesh, adam, you see, and the other one doesn't say, it just says ish. Okay, again, the aim of the lesson is to show where the Torah Sheba'al Peh must speak. Okay, so when we analyze the two pasukim, one of our rules is that there's no repetition. So if the repetition, we're going to have to say, well, Manishtana halayla zeh. What is this pasuk different? How is this pasuk different from the other pasuk? And what is the significance of that difference? Okay, so we're not going to do that work. If you'd like to, you can look at Rashi, who brings the Mechilta, but that work is not idle. I mean, that's work has to be done. Okay, and that's the work of Torah Shabbat Peh, which means that not only are we looking at the pasuk here, but we're looking at the pasuk in relationship to other pasukim. Now, what I did here, I'm going to show you the next step. So basically, this first stage is just to identify that the Torah is speaking in case and law. Okay, we're still going to read, but I'm going to show you the next stage of man out this portion. Bum ba bum 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 bum. Okay, now we're going to add a few other principles here. Okay. Okay, in this column, we're going to make a table, right?
Yeah.
We're going to make a table. Again, I'm going to try to not impose upon the pasuk as the pasukim as much as possible. Okay, but it will be, you'll see we're going to have to rearrange things a little. Now, this is going to be the no-say, which means what is the pasuk talking about? So we spoke about the Eved Ivri. Okay, now we're going to talk about Ma'keish. That'll be the subject matter. Of course, this will be just, I kept the pasukim, the numbers in just to keep them there. But here, what I did is an interesting thing. I said, if we observe, the Torah is going to talk about a poel. That means a person who is doing an act. A pu'ula, a action that he's doing. And the hefel, which is the person who he's doing it to, the result of that act. Okay. Now these words are taken from Sefer Gayon and Dark Tfunos, but it doesn't really matter where I took them from. I mean, that's why we did all this other type of research. But what I'm trying to do is identify the players in the field. Whenever we have a relationship that the Torah is talking about, there'll be a case. Now, a case is made up of actors, okay, who are interacting with each other. So we would like to know who is the actor, who is doing the actor, what his action is, and what is the result of his action. Okay? So, for instance, are you with me?
Is not the, yeah, I am. Just, it's not the recipient of the action or the person suffering. That's not one of the categories.
The pu'ula and the hefel. The hefel is the one that's receiving the action.
Okay, the sufferer or whatever.
The sufferer. Okay, you can call him the aggressor and the victim. It's also because it's not all the time the aggressor. Like with Eved Ivri, although he is damaging himself, according to my theory. Okay, and we're talking about damaging, but we're talking about the person who's doing the activity, what activity he's doing, and to whom he's doing it, right? And then we'd like to know what I call here the mischabrim, which are the conditions. Okay, mischabrim means the conditions of the act. Now, over on this side, we have what's called here I call it the no-say. This is a no-say or the case. Okay, and this is the nasu or the mishpat. It can be called either one, depending. There's two books. I mean, in common speech, so you have a subject and a predicate, a no-say and a nasu. But in legal law, so we talk about case and law. The no-say, the subject or the case, and then what the law is. Okay? So, and so that's all I did. Now, even in the mishpat, we have to ask ourselves, who is the poel of the mishpat? Do you know what I mean? It says, for instance...
It's not given in the no-say?
Let's take it where it says Mos Yumas, right?
Yeah.
We're up to here, Mos Yumas. Who's the poel?
Yep. It's not Ish. It's the Ish, yeah, it's the one who does the Makkah.
What do you mean?
Oh,
Spell
no.
it out.
Oh,
In the action of Mos Yumas. What does Mos Yumas mean? Translate
Most
most
means that he will be well, loosely it means he will be executed. He should be executed.
He shall die.
Loosely, he
Right?
shall die a death.
He shall surely die.
He shall surely die.
Right, because it's most yumas. Okay,
Right.
it doesn't say yumas, it's most yumas. It means okay. He shall surely die. Okay. Now that's talking about whom?
The perpetrator.
That's correct. Now, but who's supposed to kill him?
The judges.
Yeah. But it's not mentioned here, right? Right?
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you're saying that part of the nasu is that the person. You mean the judgment itself has an active agent?
That's correct. There's a poel in the judgment. We know who the hefel is. Who's going to receive this judgment, we know, even though it's not spelled out, right? Because as he shall certainly die. He is who? The person who killed the other person. So we know that he, the perpetrator of this act, is surely going to die, right? But we don't know the poel. Who's going to do it?
But isn't that also always given that it's the judging body?
Now, all this activity, no, because we know
nothing is a given. Yeah.
No, why do I say nothing's given? There are certain things given, but you're going to have to prove it. But because we know that sometimes there's something called misa b'dei shemayim, right? And there's misa b'dei adam, right? There's two types of sentences of death. Okay? So, since this is mishpatim, this should be the shofet doing it, right?
Right.
But we don't know, again, and this is the whole idea of this pool, we don't know how many shoftim have to do it and what the conditions they have to do it and do they need aidis to do it, or testimony, and how is the testimony given and how it's received. Okay? So that's the whole, this is the whole idea of this presentation, is to realize where the text demands that we have Torah Shabbat Peh. It's an absolute demand. It's not something nice. It's not like, I now want to make a nice little commentary about what Hashem has to say. It's a hechrach. If you don't have Torah Shabbat Peh, then you can't do this. You don't know what it means. And whatever anyone says it means, that's what it means. I could say it means from Hashem. You could say it means by a Beis Din. I could say it's a Beis Din of 72, 23, 3, 5. How many people are in a Beis Din? How do you make a Beis Din? How do we take evidence? You see? So that's the idea of this lesson, that it's the Torah Shebechtav demands the Torah Shabbat Peh. Without it, it's a useless document. And the proof is, look what the Goyim do.
Can I ask you?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a good. Actually, it's funny. I happen to be reading Martin Luther lately, and then what you're saying completely applies to his writing, because he's all about getting rid of tradition, and I mean that's his pretense. I mean, he's horrible. He's a horrible man, but his whole approach to Torah is, it will speak to me. It will tell me clearly what it wants, which is nonsense.
Which is nonsense.
I want to. It
right.
is. You're
exactly
absolutely right. I mean, that's why that's why he gave himself license to such.
Exactly, to do whatever he wants. Now the Torah is me. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
The Torah is whatever I want. That's fine.
Can I ask you, other than kares is the one type of death that is given out, min hashmayim, right?
Yes.
So, is there anything other than that? Isn't it always the body of judges that give the sentence? No. When it says most yumas, it always means.
No, it definitely means to the legal system here. This is a mishpatim. These are the mishpatim that I'm going to give lifneihem. Lifnei who? The Jewish people?
Right.
And the proof is that when a Kodesh Baruch does use B'dei Shemayim in this section, I'll just again slip further on there. He happens to say, when it comes to the Almana, that I'll take care of them. Mashma, that you're taking care of them.
Right.
You see?
Right. That's the other, right, so that's the other. By the way, when he says that, does that mean there's no, when the punishment comes
from... Yeah.
Right. So when the punishment comes from Kodesh Baruch Hu, does that mean there is no process of law? or does it mean that there has been a process?
It depends.
of law,
It
and the
depends.
judges have decided
Usually,
this is
usually
something-
better person. It's usually better when a person gets makos or even Rahmanas Nisa in this world than there's a kapara. You know, it's always better to get punished in this world, because the punishment in this world is a kapara, even death. Then it's a kapara. But if even a person's death is a kapara if he doesn't min shemayim. But it's better that the person can clean up whatever he has to clean up in this world than to
I'm asking a technical.
than to have Hashem table.
What I'm
Yeah,
asking
go ahead. What?
I'm asking a technical question. If this is mishpatim, so it suggests that all of these are cases that are brought before a court of law.
Yes.
And if there happens to be a case where the judges decide, they say, look, we cannot execute this person. The execution required here is mina shemayim. But does that mean that nevertheless the case has gone through, and part of that judgment is, okay, we're handing him over now to the Eibishter? Or does it mean that, no, there is no mishpat here? It's, this is a case that from beginning to end is God's handling it. See what I'm saying? It's a technical question. It's a question of procedure, legal procedure.
I can't answer the question.
Okay.
I mean, I can't answer responsibly. I can't. It's a good question. Okay. So now, my point here is to have us focus on a poel, a person who's doing an activity, to identify him, to identify his activity, to identify the person who is receiving this activity, and then we'll look at the mishpatim, okay? And again, this is only a way so that we'll be, when we see that the Torah doesn't tell us who the poel is or the hefel is, so we're going to have a question. That's all. Okay, and these are the things these questions are the things that the Torah Shabbat Peh is going to have to explain to us. Okay, even like the question you're answering. We're going to have source. The Ramchal, by the way, if I could sum up his work, it's all about statement and source. Okay, he describes, which eventually we'll have to get into it, but he describes the sources, which are the foundations of truth. What is the foundation of something we call truth? Okay, things from natural observation to Masara. Okay, but he goes to a very extensive explanation. It's something very important that I think you could read. You can read the Ramchal as we did in Derek Tfunos. It's one of his very, very important sections. So here, to summarize the Ramchal, is basically talking about statement and proof. Now we have to know what's considered proof, but we have to have the statement. We have to know where the statement begins, where it ends, and then we have to have a proof to fill in the missing parts. Okay, and that proof is going to have to be either in context here or in Torah Shabbat Peh or some other context from another place. But okay, so here I just added now that let's add another element here, which is just to label the actors in the case and be aware of them, just to see if parts are left out. And this is not an idle activity, as I said, because this is exactly what will force us into the Torah Shabbat Peh, and that's what they're going to be doing. The first rule of Darkei Gemara is to be medactic on language. Everything here is purposeful, placed with purpose. Okay, so let's go to the ear now, makeish, okay? So now that gray I put in because it's a whole. It doesn't tell us who. This is what we just did. It just says maknes. So we don't know who the poel is, okay? We don't know if it's an ish, if it's a cotton, if it's a woman. We don't know any of these details. But someone, did a pula of maker. That means he hit somebody. We don't even know how he hit someone, but he hit him with his fist, with an object. Don't know. But he hit someone. Ish, a man. What about an isha? What about a cotton? Same rule. We know the result. The result is that the person died. And then we said, here's the law. So we have the case, and here's the law, and we said, who's the poel of the law? We know the result, that he's going to die, and we want to know who is the poel, and what type of ul is it? Is it, there's various ways that people can be, the Beis Din can take a person out of the world, right? Which one is it? Is it, strangulation, sword, stoning? Which one is it? You see? No, not mentioned here. So we have to, again, Torah Shabbat Peh, please tell us which one. Okay. Also, it must be mentioned here that a Beis Din once executed a person. There were one Beis Din in 70 years did it, and they were called a murderous Beis Din. In other words, if you look at the actual laws of execution in Torah, again, Torah Shabbat Peh, it's practically impossible to convict someone of murder. It's practically impossible. In reality, every way that the Beis Din can figure out not to do an execution is done. Okay, so as opposed to what people reading the Chumash, it seems everyone, just throw him and kill him, murder him, get rid of him. Okay, so there it is. There's Makayeshim. Now, let's read the next part of the pasuk. So now I'm just putting it in this context. Again, leaving the words, but I'm putting in the context. More of the case. Okay, what's the next part here? Vasher. So it says Makayeshim meis mos yumas. Now it says, go ahead.
Wait, this is a different, what is this?
Oh, now, this is the Pesukim again. This is what I want to tell you. But all I did is I put it in a reshet. I put it in a table. But it's the Pesukim that goes from right to left. Anything that I added, I put in gray. Okay, so we're going to read the Pesukim here. Okay. And the reason why I colored these things in is because I want to notice in the person who is the victim, you notice the victim is going to change here. From Ish to Aviv Imo, to Ish to Aviv Mo, to Ish Esre'ehu, to Eved, to Ish Hara. You see, that's the victims. The hula is going to change from Makkah to Ganav to Makalel. So I just wanted to have them in a nice line so I could watch which one of these three elements, or actually four elements, change. Is it the poel that's going to change, the pa'ula, or the hefel? And then once I can see that, I'm going to ask myself, well, why did it change the poel or the pa'ula here? You see? You got my idea?
Yeah.
So I'm just reading the Pesukim, but I just put it in this table so that I'll be able to say to myself every time, well, okay, who's doing the activity? What is the activity? Who's the result of the activity? And what are the okay, we're calling them
so now this is now a second case.
Let's read it first. Let's always read. Let's see what it says. This is the second pasuk, though. So okay. First pasuk said, "Machi meish mos yumas."
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So makeh ve'asher. So this is now qualification, I guess.
Exactly.
What does that mean? That he didn't tzidah? What?
Tzidah means he didn't hunt him.
Oh, I see. So in other words, it's not at the first degree. It's not murder in the first degree. And God didn't step in to save the guy, I guess.
Actually, it means Hashem placed the victim in his hand.
Right, that's what I mean. That Hashem didn't use a miraculous means to save.
He didn't save him. He actually put the victim in the perpetrator's hand.
Oh, he put him in. Aha.
The murderer did not hunt the victim. Hashem placed the victim in the murderer's hand. What does that mean?
I guess he got in the way. Yeah. I don't know. There's two ways to read. But it's not. He's not hunting him means that he didn't have that he had no intentions of killing him, or that.
Yes, very simply, exactly.
So
he had no intention of killing him. Kodesh Baruch Hu put the victim into his hand, which means Rahman is driving his car, and someone runs into the street and he kills him.
So you're right.
It's not, what do we say? There's premeditated murder. That's the
Yeah.
first case, most humans. And this is accidental
Third
murder.
degree, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, accidental murder.
Accidental murder, yeah.
Okay.
ושמתי לך מקום אשר ינוס שמה. So I will give you a place where, what is Yanus here? I forget.
Where you can flee.
This is our right, so this is our miklat, right?
100%. This is an Ir Miklat. This is the whole concept of an Ir Miklat, which is, again, all the pratim have to be explained. Where is it explained? Not explained here. But by saying, I gave you a place, now you have to explain where's the place, what does it mean to escape there, who has a right to chase after this premeditated murder, how long does he have to stay there, all these details of Torah Shabbat Peh. Okay? There's no way to understand this without Torah Shabbat Peh. Okay? But we know generally, so we talked about, the first case was talked about premeditated murder. The second case is talking about non-premeditated murder, right? Accidental murder. So there, the persecutor has to escape, flee to one of these cities. If not, we know, again, all these details. The Goel Adam has a right to avenge his death, even if it's not, if it wasn't done intentionally. Okay? Beseda. But okay, now here we don't have who is the person that didn't trap him. Okay, so again, it has to be the same ish we're talking about. We don't know. It just says maka ishu may, so I just put in the word ish. Okay, could be a katan, could be an isha. We don't know. Okay, but that's, again, Torah Shabbat has to tell us. But that same person, whoever he is, if he's an ish, he's also, the second case is where it's accidental death. Okay? So now that order makes sense because we're going from the worst case scenario, as you said, to the lesser case scenario, right? To premeditated murder to not. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Okay, now also I've noticed, and we'll check it out as we go along, Hashem likes to go from the Chumrah to the Kal, from the worst case to the lesser case. Okay, so let's read this third din here, which is over here.
Right, now he goes to the worst case, back up to...
Oh, yes.
Okay, yes. So v'chi yazid ish al re'ehu le'argo be'arma. So if somebody in a meditated way kills his neighbor with intention.
Craftiness, whatever.
With craftiness, right.
Like the snake had armor, yeah?
Right. He's a smooth tongue.
Right, exactly.
Right. So me'im izbechi tikachno lamut. So you should grab him from my altar. It's so... In other words, don't grant him sanctuary under any conditions. It's interesting. How is this case different from the first one?
Exactly.
Because the first one is giving us his klal, and then it gives us the klal is then modified and gives us, says, well, wait a minute. In the case of an accidental murder, you can't apply the klal, and then it goes back to the klal, but gives us. It seems to be a little bit different from the klal because it's insisting on the intentionality of the act.
Right, it spells out the intentionality, but again, we have to investigate all these variations in case here. Okay, we already know that the first case, wasn't it Mazid? Obviously, this first case is Mazid. Why are we killing him? You see, we have to give a Yezidish. You see, and all of a sudden here, the victim changes too. Because here we said umaka ish, right? All of a sudden here he's called Re'ehu. Some friend, huh? Okay.
But it's not that. It's more general than that, I think. It's not exactly.
Re'ehu is probably going to be a miyut. Who's not a Re'ehu? Yeah. Who's not a Re'ehu?
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's probably a non-Jew, you see. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, probably. Usually the
Re'ehu
Re'ehu,
is
V'ahavta kamocha, no, it's after Re'echa kamocha. Who's your Re'echa? It's usually another Jew. Maybe this would not
right.
apply to killing a goy. I don't want to say anything publicly that could be, nowadays everyone listens to everyone, and all of a sudden I have a gigantic
Right.
scandal here. So I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. But I'm just saying. Again, we're being medactic on the shinui lashon. There's a set of 7 rules that he says in Dr. Gemara when you're learning what you should do. The first rule is always medactic and lashon. But one of the minor rules, the following rules, is called shinui lashon. If there's a change in language from one case to the next, you have to say, why did it change? Okay, and that's what making this chart just helps us do. It has us focus on why is the change. Here the victim was called Ish, and here the victim is called Re'ehu. Okay? And here also it spells out Lahar Go, and here it says Umes. Well, what was it over here? Makish Umes. How is that difference Lahar Go? Okay? Okay? Who says? Maybe here was a friendly fight. I mean, maybe they were just fighting with each other. Who knows? And here's the case of murder. But then there's no Mos Yumas here. No, it does say Lemus. Okay? So these, again, diukim in language are going to be very, very important for us. Okay? Beseda. But let's go weiter again. We're just going through a general overview, how to see our specific case. Okay, umaka. Oh, so now we go here to the next case.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Umake.
Umake, yes.
Imo is in blue, so it's not.
Yeah, the reason why I did blue, again, I've been studying this myself, so when there's a change in case, I just wanted to demonstrate that the hefel here changes. We were talking about an ish or a re'ehu. Now all of a sudden it's maka aviv imo, right?
Right.
And what's the mishpat here?
What's the chiddush? I mean, it's
well. First, let's read what it says.
Yeah, motumat. So yeah, it also should be.
Now you ask, what's the chiddush here? Do we know
what's the chiddush over killing a man? In other words, over ish?
Well, do we know what happened to the Av and Imo? Here it tells us what happened to him.
I see. So here it's unconditional.
Here's a hold. It's unconditional.
Right. Right.
So he doesn't have to die. That's a big chiddush.
Right. Yeah.
So he doesn't have to die. Maybe just a little tap is also chayav misa. Where's the other end of the scale? So they're going to learn that it has to be a makkah that causes a makkah has to cause a bruise. But there, it's a terrible, terrible punishment. If a person would bruise his father and mother, so then it's Mos Yumas. He doesn't have to kill them. Obviously, as you said, if he killed the mother and father, that's no worse than killing any man. Right? So here it's purposely left out what the result is, because it doesn't have to be Misa. Okay? So we went from a general case of murder to a specific case of murder called the mother and the father. Okay?
Not murder.
No, seriously, not murder. I'm sorry. No, of battery, damaging. Let's say I use the word damage. Okay? Right. I mean, the worst type of damage is killing a person, but then there's lesser degrees. What degree is this? Okay, but that's what it says. Okay, let's go a little weiter.
וגנב איש ומכרו ומצא בידו מות יומת. So if he kidnaps somebody and he sells him, it's interesting. What does that mean? He kidnaps him and he sells him to somebody else as a human traffic, right?
Right.
But what does that mean? But then why is he found in his hands?
If he sold him, how could it exactly? A contradiction. Yeah. If he sold him, how is he found in his hand? Yeah. Right? Excellent. After Rashi. He was going to tell us Torah Shabbat Peh. There has to be witnesses that he had. I mean, again, Torah Shabbat Peh. There's nothing in the text that would tell you this. There has to be witnesses at the time that saw him with this man under his hand before he sold him, in order to convict him of death. But again, Torah Shabbat Peh. No way to understand that. Okay, so now we went from Makkah. Now we switched our whole pu'ulah here, from hitting to stealing, right? Right? And we went back to the general ish, right? And here he did not kill a person at all, right? All he did was sell him. So the result of the action of Geneva was that he sold him. He just didn't steal him and keep him in his house, but he sold him. And that also has a terrible consequence of kidnapping, mos yumas. Okay? Let's go a little weiter.
So if he curses his parents, then he also deserves to be executed.
Right. So it's very interesting that that Ula here. Now we don't know who cursings. I wrote no bat. You see, we don't know who did the cursing. Well, it has to be. It says his father or mother, so it has to be the ben or the bat does it, right? But we notice that there's as far as the pu'ula is concerned, it's a much lighter pu'ula. It's only words, and yet it has the same result, right? Okay, let's go.
There must be a formal definition of klala.
Yes, 100%.
If he just gets upset one day and then,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, does he have to say Hashem's name? Again, all these details must be spelled out. Okay, so let's go here.
So if two men are fighting,
okay,
I guess they're having a physical fight,
right?
And one of them hits the other one in some way. One hits the other.
And all conditions. Or a growth, the fist.
Or with
his fist. Egrov is a fist.
And the guy that he hits doesn't die. And he faints or comatose.
He has to go to bed somehow. He has to now. He's injured, so he has to now lie in bed, right?
He has to lie down. I see. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he gets up later and he starts walking around outside, al mishanto.
Mashant is a staff. His crutches, a staff. Exactly.
Right, so he's walking on, holding his. So yeah, he's on crutches.
Mm-hmm. What's the din?
So the din is v'nakeh hamakam. What does that mean? That
he's clean. The person who hit him is clean. What does it mean, clean? Let's keep reading.
He's clean from he's innocent, in other words. Innocent?
He's clean from the death penalty. He's clean from the death penalty.
Right. Right, so rak shivto yitem v'rapeh yirapeh. So he should only, what is shivto?
His shevet, his Shabbos, the guy's loss of work.
I see. So he should pay him for his...
He's in bed now. He's in bed now,
right.
Or he's hobbling around. We can't work anymore. So the persecutor exactly has to pay him for his lost time, and also his medical expenses.
Right, and I guess that applies. It's not just it's any medical expenses or rest expenses resulting from that.
Right, exactly.
In perpetuity, like no matter how. I mean, what if
now you're asking all sorts of Gemara. You see, now you are asking all the questions in the Gemara. You see, what happens if the guy is healed, right? I mean, he gets up and he walks around and he throws away his crutches. Now all of a sudden, he develops some sort of heart problem. So now you're going
Right.
to now you're going to say now that heart problem was a result of that hit you gave him, and he went into bed, and I have to pay for the medical bills for that.
Yeah.
And these are all the problems that the Gemara discusses here. You must discuss the details, because again, Torah is practical religion. That means it has to be practiced. It has to come down to dollars and cents. You see, it's not just it's not a philosophy. Love your neighbor as yourself, as Hillel said, and all the rest is commentary. All that commentary, if you don't have it, you can't love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, it doesn't work. It's not just a theory. It has to be in dollars and cents. What does that mean? So here, that's where Torah Shabbat comes in. But notice what changed in this level here. First of all, we changed to two people fighting now, you see? Before, we had one perpetrator and one victim, right? Now we have two people fighting with each other. So they're each fighting with each other. It's not a poor guy walking the street, all of a sudden someone bops them in the head. Now the two people are actively engaged in a fight. So now they're called shootsmen, they're partners in it. And one hits the other one, and he has now to be responsible. Okay, so maybe what we'll do here, anyway, we'll stop. Okay, we'll do another class on this. Yeah. No, okay. What I want to do is do another class.
If you're going to stop, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm going to stop here. But you understand what my aim is here. I'll send you this. The point is again to have us concentrate on the flow of information, and to see what we can observe, at least, about this flow of information. And when we see a flow doesn't make sense, then we're going to ask ourselves a question. Okay, this doesn't make logical sense as far as the Seder is concerned, okay? But we have to understand, how does the Torah present its information? Over here, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It says, ayin tachas ayin, shein tachas shein, yad tachas yad, regel tachas regel. What's the order there?
Yeah.
What's the order?
What do you mean, what's the order?
Eye, tooth, hand, and foot.
Oh, that's nice. I never noticed that.
Of course you never
That's
noticed
very cool. That's very funny. That's interesting, right, from top to bottom.
Exactly.
That's very cool.
So now we see that the Torah has, now again we're just using one example, but we see that the Torah has, in this case at least, a preference to go from top down. So we notice it went from Chumrah to Kula, and now from top down. Okay, so now
this must be related to what somebody once told me. He said that in the medical profession, the amount that the patient hates the doctor is directly relative to how high up in the body the doctor treats you. Wow. So everybody hates dentists. Like a dentist, everybody can't stand, right? But foot doctors, everybody loves.
Right.
Because it's all down your foot. You know, you don't mind being handled on your feet. But if you're talking about your eyes or your mouth or your ears, that's already, you know.
Well, the brain is the worst, right?
Right.
Although the heart is pretty bad. But okay. Anyway, whatever it is, but the point is here we're trying to observe. I tell people, I make a pun. We're called observant Jews. The beginning of learning is observation. The beginning of learning is observation. Okay? So when we see that, let our observation take us as far as it can go, and then we have to then appeal to Mishnah, Gemara, Rishonim to fill in those places where we see there's a gap in our information, or as we see a contradiction. Okay? Beseder? So we'll continue on this movement, okay, until we get to our case, which is going to be all in here, okay, when we get to Meitav Sedehu, and then we'll slowly go from the inside out. Okay. That's what
Thank you very, very much again.
Okay.
This is great.
Okay. Baruch Hashem. Have a great week.
You too. Shabbat.